boundaries is
Right.
very
Boundaries.
yeah, like how do you even know, right? Like how do you know what your boundaries are, right? Well, I feel like a good way to start is to look into those relationships.
Yeah.
Or how
Yeah.
do you
I would
handle
say that too. I mean, boundaries, I think it starts looking into the relationships, but maybe first looking into yourself, right? Because, like, okay, for example, like me, I'll just use a good boundary. This is the first one that popped in my head. Like, people who know me know that I have established boundaries about, like, my sacred space, aka my home, right? So, people who know me, even like my sisters who are super close to me, they know that they can't come to Jay's house unannounced. Okay, it's a boundary that I have set up. I only allow a select few here in my sanctuary, and the ones who do, they already know. Like, we'll notify you before I come. And does this time work for you? Does this day work for you?
Yes.
Do you have anything planned? It's a boundary there. It's a boundary that I have set up and created, and it feels pretty good to have those boundaries. You know what I mean,
Absolutely.
right? Because you never know. You could be having an off day. Just using the example of people coming to my home, I could be having an off day. We all have those. A day where I'm taking a day for my self-care, and maybe I don't want to interact with other energies. And like I said, the people who are close to me, they know that, all right, we won't show up here unannounced. And it's a healthy boundary to have. And also, too, it makes me feel empowered and in control of my surroundings, because it is my space and I do live alone. So I feel like I have good control over that, and it feels good because it's like healthy, you know what I mean? And people respect that. They know, okay, let me call Jay before I come. Like, hey, are you busy? Is it okay if I stop by and see you for a little bit? And it feels really good rather than having someone show up and they're like, hey, I'm here, and you're like, you know
I'm
what I
not
mean?
feeling well,
Right,
or-
and
or I'm
yeah,
kind of tuning into myself, or I'm cleaning.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I get it.
yeah. So healthy boundaries, and boundaries used to be like a scary thing for me. Like, it was really difficult for me to set boundaries because boundaries are different for every relationship you have in your life.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, like you have different boundaries for your family, different boundaries for your friends, different boundaries for their business partners, and different boundaries for strangers and things like that.
It's all like it's all categorized.
Right.
Like you have to learn how to divide each relationship and the boundaries within
Right.
it.
You do.
It sounds
you
kind
do.
of complex.
It is, but just like you said, it's like that intro work that you do, like going inside, figuring out, okay, who am I, for one? Who am I? What do I like? What do I need? You know what I mean? Figuring those things out, and then I think you're able to establish better boundaries,
Right.
I mean, for example, like, think about it. Maybe, like, some of you guys are out there watching right now, right? Maybe you have, like, young kids at home and you try to go to bed early, and so a boundary for you, I'm sure, would probably be like, no one's gonna call your phone at like midnight. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
they know you're resting and you have work in the morning, you have the kids. That's a boundary that you have set up. Maybe someone else doesn't have that boundary, and maybe their life is different. Maybe they don't have kids, they don't have really intensive responsibilities that are tying them to something, and maybe you could call them at midnight. You know what I mean? But it just depends on the person and the boundaries that they have,
Right.
and the relationship that you have with them, too. So,
Right. I always make sure to ask, like, I have a good friend of mine, Shar, who always has my back, and like, it's like it's a sibling vibe almost with them, And I always ask if I'd have to crash at their place. I always make sure, hey, like, is it? I don't. Please let me know. Like, let's be transparent. Like, is it okay if I stay over? If like I don't want to invade your space, maybe I'm going through a hard time. I don't want to like invade space where you're feeling a certain type of way either, and bring that into someone's space. So also you have to be aware of. You also have to be aware that people have boundaries, and you have to be sensitive to that, and
Right.
also take the initiative to respect that, like, hey, like, right.
Right, definitely. And I respect you for that, because I think a lot of people, they don't ask. And so that says a lot about your character, which goes a long way. Speaking of friends, like, it makes me think of one of my friends named Johnny, right? And so what he does is he asks as well, ask even for small things like consent. Like, is it okay that I hug you?
Oh, that's
Like,
sweet.
wow, right? I am like, wow. Maybe some people, they don't like touch, or maybe they're
Some
not
people don't.
huggers, right? Some people don't. You know, maybe they're a hugger like me. I'm a hugger. Like, I love touch. I love to hug and embrace. But maybe it's a day where, like, my energy is super off and, like, I don't want to touch anybody or hug anybody, which is very rare. Like, I always, like, welcome a hug. But, like, for them to just ask that showed me right there, like, wow, this person really respects my space. This person really respects boundaries.
Yeah, that's cool.
And this person is really trying to understand my boundaries.
Right,
Which, like, that's why I commend you for asking, because as a friend, that shows a lot that you're respecting your friend's boundaries. And maybe you might not know them all because they may not be clear, but you're making sure that you don't overstep any of the boundaries by checking.
You kind of just tiptoe around, like, you tiptoe around to make sure.
Right.
Because you never know with people. I mean, people won't be like, these are my boundaries.
Right. They're not going to write it out and make a list, you know, but...
Hey, friend, here's
but dang, how good would that be? Like, we make a list, these are the boundaries, these are the things you don't do, these are the things you know, but make it easy for you. No, but seriously, though, like, I commend you for that. Yeah. It's very respectable, like, to ask. You know, ask a person, you know, is it okay to do this? Is it okay to call you at this time? Is it okay to come over? Is it okay, you know, to go out with you this week or whatever the case may be? Boundaries are a huge one. I think boundaries will be like a whole other video that we touch on and just speak of boundaries. How to establish healthy boundaries.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Healthy boundaries is the key. That's the key.
Healthy boundaries and how to respect. Like, we could do both ways, right? We could be like the person who sets the boundaries and the person who has like how to respect other people's boundaries is very important. Because sometimes it hurts your feelings, you know? Like,
that's true.
Wow. You know, for example, in a romantic relationship, someone was a certain way and they realized in the relationship that, wow, I never set these boundaries. And all of a sudden they set these boundaries and the other person in the relationship's like, whoa, what the heck? You know?
Right.
So it throws things off, and I feel that at the end of the day, you really have to communicate.
It's true.
You have to be impeccable with communication and just flat out honest. Like, hey, I don't really like that, right? Just be very honest.
That's true.
Try to be transparent as possible, because at the end of the day, we can't really read each other's minds.
True. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I know sometimes, even for myself, it used to be so difficult, right, to be that transparent and like to tell somebody no and like, no, don't do that, in fear of hurting the other person's feelings or like making them feel uncomfortable or making them feel bad. Like, what would be, for the people who are still struggling with that, what could you say like would be a great tip to start with? Like, maybe they don't say, let's say, we'll use this as an example. Okay, let's say a friend asks you to go out to dinner, but maybe you're not feeling well, and you know it's probably best that you stay home and rest. Well, what would you do if you knew the friend really wanted you to go, but you knew you really needed the rest, to rest your body, to prepare for the week? How would you go about that? Like,
I would be as honest as possible. Your friend, if it's a true friend, they should understand. You know, people need to learn not to take things personally.
Right.
Too.
Yeah.
That's a big
one.
I just read this book called The Four Agreements. Yes. Such a good book. The Four Agreements. Check it out.
Yes, by Don
Miguel Ruiz.
Yeah, Miguel. Yes.
So good. And oh my gosh. I was
No, you're good. I cut you off. But you were saying about that we talked about boundaries and then not taking things personal, which is one of the four agreements.
Just be straight up. Like, just be honest and say, hey, you know what? I love you and I really want to hang out with you. But to be honest, I'm not feeling very well today. And I would like this time to get my rest. But please know that I really do want to hang out with you. It's just not a good time for me. And I would like to make some time for us when I'm feeling better, you know, and your friend should understand.
Right. I like that.
And you shouldn't feel guilty either. I know sometimes we feel guilty.
Right.
Because I felt like that before.
Yeah, me too. A lot. Yeah. You know?
And people will call you a flake and stuff, but I mean, I don't know, man. Just don't take things personal.
But you're right, though. And it's not that you're being a flake. It's really that you're kind of tuning in and giving yourself what you need, which is self-care, really. You know what I mean? And self-care is so important, and sometimes it can be hard to take that time for yourself, you know? Because I think we have this manufactured guilt when we say no to certain things. we may feel guilty. But I challenge myself to turn that guilt around into like appreciation for honoring my space and the time I need for me, to recharge. Right. Now that took a long time to kind of start creating that new habit, because I would feel so much guilt to the point where, if someone invited me out, like I probably wouldn't say no. Like I would probably, go ahead and do it and go out to kind of please that friend. But through the years, I got more comfortable with saying no, and I noticed a shift in my life.
That's huge.
Yeah, like I noticed I had more energy, I had more control, I just felt better about myself. I felt less guilt, and sometimes guilt can be so, like, it just can really eat you up. And guilt can lead to other things. Guilt can lead you to self-medicating and doing like destructive behaviors or risky behaviors, but releasing that guilt was like a big one for me. And it was just really finding the ability to say no, or not at this time, I need to do this for myself, and having understanding friends as well. Like Sanai said, if your friend is a true friend and, they're upset about it, that's kind of showing you where they're at and where the relationship is at. Yeah. You know what I mean?
And just like how they are. Like, yeah. I don't know, I feel like a true friend and where they're at in life. Some people, right. People think differently.
True.
As long as, you know your truth, and they might not take it the right way, it's fine. Just release the guilt. Stay true to yourself and what you need first.
Always.
And that's it. Like, you can apologize later, or you can mend that later, but I don't think it's a big deal,
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like Sanai kind of said, like, people can only really meet you on the level that they first have met themselves. So they might not be on a level, of understanding and where you're at, and that's okay. Everybody's growing at their own pace. Yeah. We all have our own journey, you know what I mean? But I think tuning in with yourself is where you want to start first with anything.
For sure. And we can touch on that on the next episode. Maybe we can talk about, techniques to tune into yourself. Yeah. I know a lot of people, I know I have a lot of questions about that. But also we can kind of talk about it together. And,
definitely.
Figure that out. I know you have a little more experience with tuning in with yourself. I guess we all do it differently,
Right, yeah.
For me, it's very much sitting in silence and just thinking about stuff, reflecting. Sometimes my mind does spin out of control into assumptions, but that's how my mind works. Other times I listen to a podcast, I listen to something on YouTube that makes me feel good, that gives me some insight of a way of thinking.
Right.
I read a book. Yeah. Things like that. But we can talk about that next time.
Yeah, I like that. And like Sanai said, what works for me may not work for you, but I definitely will offer some options and some suggestions of some things that I learned throughout my years of tuning in with myself and like connecting with myself. Yeah. You know what I mean? So we definitely will share some things with you all next video. I hope you tune into that, and we're glad you joined us today. Seriously, yeah. We're happy to be here, and we're happy to share and help and inspire, and Brody's happy to be here too, guys. He wants to show you some love and say hello, and hope you guys are well.
Cool, and we'll see you next time.
We will. Have a lovely, lovely time, guys. Love ya.